Time. Good afternoon. Welcome to another round of the TeleK, What You Need to Know About Your 401k Right Now, presented by me and by Sage Rutty. So let's dive right in. First, my name is Craig Gingerich. I'm a certified financial planner, accredited investment fiduciary, and certified health savings advisor here at Sage Rutty. A couple of the ground rules that you might already be familiar with. We try and keep it to 15 minutes. Again, make sure that it's a valuable use of your time, just the most important things. I'll just ask that you save the questions for the end. So if you do have questions, there's a Q&A button and I'll address them at the end. And then a reminder that Sage Rutty and I are always here as a resource. Through the relationship, through your 401k, we're here to help you in anything in life with a dollar sign next to it. Please don't hesitate to reach out to ask us questions. We're very happy to help. Anything from investing to budgeting to college saving or tackling debt or estate planning, any of that, please don't hesitate to reach out. That's what we're here for. So without further ado, let's dive right in. Today's agenda, we're going to be talking about three things. First is it's not over. The second is we'll talk a little bit about target date funds and when's the right time to get out of them. And then the third, as always, is some actionable steps. What can you be doing right now to take full advantage of our current situation? So it's not over, right? So there's really no reason to believe that the volatility is completely behind us. I know we've been experiencing a pretty good roller coaster, especially the last couple months. There's equally no reason to believe that the recovery is over, right? That we've been seeing some substantial growth from the bottom of the market earlier this year, and no reason to believe that that's over. And the truth is, that's just the nature of the stock market, right? We're likely to see more downturns, and we're likely to see long-term growth. That's what it does. You can't have one without the other. You can't have the ups without the temporary downs. And I found this chart that I think is really interesting to put it into perspective. So this is the last 96 years and the returns of each of those years. And what's really interesting about this chart, as you kind of see that the ups and downs going on with it, over the long term, over that 96-year period, it annualized a return of 10%. So if you stayed invested every year while you had the ups and downs, your average ended up being 10%. But only 94 years. Only 6 of those 94 years had within a 2% return of returning 10%. So while the average was 10%, the reality was that you had significant highs and significant lows, and that it just kind of averaged out to that. And 69 of those positive periods, 69 of those 94 years were positive, and 25 of them were negative, and gives you a little bit of a range here on what the max and the minimum were in those given years. So I know my uncle always gives me a hard time each time that we chat, and he's always like, my advisor told me I should expect a 7% rate of return. He's like, and I never see a 7% return. When is this going to happen? And the truth is, right, you may never see it hit exactly what your average is going to be, but you'll have the high years and the low years, and the at the end of the day, typically the stock market has been a substantial positive return. When we look at like the frequency, so some people say, okay, if you're saying it's not over, how frequently can we expect to feel this market volatility? How frequently do we see a downturn that's noteworthy? On average, you can expect to see about a 10% decline every 1.7 years, about every 20 months. Looking closer at a 20% decline that happens about every 4.5 years, and then 30+ declines happen about once a decade. So while on the surface you might see this and say, okay, well, we saw a 30+% decline, I'm just gonna, we'll be perfectly fine for the next 10 years. We won't experience any more volatility. And the truth is that there's 3 types of lies, right? There's lies, damned lies, and statistics, right? It's really easy to look at this stat and say 30% decline every 10 years, I'll be fine for the next 10 years. Here's a quick chart of each of the 19+% corrections that we've experienced in basically the last 100 years. When you look at them, each of these bars is the year that it happened, and then the height of the bar is the years since the prior 19 plus correction. And so what you'll see is there's some significant gaps here, which leads to a larger bar. While the average distance between these 19+% corrections is about 4.5 years, they ranged from as high as 8 years and 4 months to as little as 7 months. So while the average is 4.5 years, it's not uncommon to see it happen a lot more frequently, or to see these larger gaps and have 7 or 8 years between them. So just something to keep in mind as we're talking about not trying to predict the market. It's really difficult to know exactly what to expect. And history, while it does repeat itself, it's not always in the exact same order when it repeats itself. So it leads us to the question, well, when is the right time to invest? And I want to steal a quote from Nick Murray, who's a financial philosopher, and he shared the only right time to buy equities, buy stocks for the long term is when you have the money. And in that scenario, you should do it by nightfall, right? Or I also really loved, he shared his rule that he and his wife follow for investing. And they always ask the question, will I be glad that I made this investment in 10 years from now? And in his newsletter, he was sharing kind of the gut check that he and his wife kind of ran into, recognizing, okay, we're in the middle of a pandemic. This is a little scary. And his wife wanted to invest more, and he said no. And she, called him on it and said, will you be happy in 10 years from now if you invest more today? And he says, oh, shoot, I think I'll probably be happy in 10 months from now. So it's a good rule of thumb of, it's really easy to be scared by today's headlines, but you don't invest for the future based on today's headlines. You invest for the future based on what the future holds. So let's move on to topic number 2, talk about some target date funds, because I'm really excited about this one and glad that we had a chance to share it in the TeleK. So a little backstory on what a target date fund is. If you ever see an account that's listed as, XYZ company target and then 2050 or target 2030 or anything that basically includes the year in there is a target date fund, and they're designed to be the easy button to investing. So they're designed to say, based on how old you are and retiring around the year 65, this is how you should be invested. And as you get closer to retirement, they adjust it behind the scenes. So they start with, okay, if you're 25 years old, you're probably going to be mostly in stocks, right? And then as you get closer, they'll then start adjusting and say, okay, let's add in some bonds, let's add in some cash, make things a little less volatile, which on the surface makes absolutely perfect sense, right? Of, okay, I'm Joe Investor. I don't know what I'm doing with this. I want to just buy a fund that's going to make sure I'm in the right stuff and adjust for me. Fantastic. A target date fund's really good for that. Where they stop making sense is a little bit later on. And I think the best way to explain this is using an analogy from my childhood. So I'm going to share the story of my first business. And it looks something like this. So growing up, I lived on Main Street in Strikersville, New York, which if you know where that is, that's incredible that you know that. It's the tiniest little town in America. But each year they have a town-wide yard sale. And so my brothers and I would carry a table out to the end of the driveway and try and sell stuff. The problem is that we were never nearly as cute as these little girls or the little girls that were up the street from us that would always outsell us. So we needed to be strategic. And so while they had kind of tackled the lemonade game, we decided that the right mix for us was to do some water, do coffee, and the magic was Freezy Pops. And that was the real money maker. And when I talked about being strategic, it was recognizing, water sold pretty average all the time, right? It didn't really matter what was going on. People wanted bottled water, but it wasn't overly profitable. And then if we saw that it was really cold out, right, then we wanted to push coffee versus really hot out. We wanted to push the Freezy Pops. And then the key is that, you need to adjust your strategy based on the environment and not just try and sell all of them equally. If you can picture, 3 little boys yelling at people, hey, do you want water or coffee or Freezy Pops? Is a lot different than 3 little cute boys saying, hey, it's really hot out. Wouldn't a freezy pop be nice? Or, hey, you look pretty cold. How about a cup of coffee? Right? It allows you to kind of adjust things to be more more strategic and more profitable. And so the key here is that you don't want to bundle and save, right? While buying bundle and save makes sense, when selling it does not. So carrying this back to our target date funds, with a target date fund, when you hit retirement, when you're ready to start taking dollars out, they sell it pro rata across all of the funds. And so that means, hey, I need $10,000, right? And I just retired. Okay, well, you're going to end up with $4,000 of that sold from the stocks and $5,000 sold from the bonds and $1,000 sold from cash. And the reality is, based on the stock market, that might be a terrible way to go about it, right? That ideally what you want to be doing is, if the market's really strong, you want to be selling exclusively from your stocks, right? You want to take the cream off the top and say, stocks have gone great, let's sell from those winners. Or maybe the market's weak, right? Maybe things have been down, and the last thing you want to do is sell from stocks while they're at a loss. I want to sell from bonds and cash while the market's weak. And target date funds don't allow you to do that, right? They force you to sell it pro rata across everything, which I'd argue is not a good strategy. So it makes a ton of sense while you're in your early years, right? If you're starting your career off, or really you can barely even spell retirement at this point, a target date fund works great. If you're getting closer, typically I recommend, if you're within 3 years of retirement, that's the time to do it. And your account still should probably look something similar to this, right? You still want a balance of stocks and bonds and cash, but you don't want them all built into one thing that you're forced to sell everything at the same time. So one side note, if you are young and you're still with me, if you're in a target date fund or if you're in a balanced fund, take a look at your investments. Take a look under the hood of exactly what you're buying. So we have a client that we just brought on board, and the old custodian had these balanced accounts, and they labeled them conservative and moderate and aggressive, but the aggressive was 22% cash and bonds. Just know what you're buying. No 25-year-old should be invested 20% in cash and bonds. It's just not necessary. So take a look under the hood, find out exactly what you're invested in. Which leads me to my action items. First, if you have extra cash flow, consider investing it, right? If you can afford to, invest more. The second, take a deeper dive on your investments. Take a look at how you're invested, and take a look at the purpose. Make sure that what you're invested in still makes sense. And the third bonus item that I want to include this week is talking about HSAs, which I'll go over really quickly. The quick and dirty on it is they're awesome. If you have the option of an HSA, if you have one available, be taking advantage of it. So the quick backstory, to have an HSA, you need a high deductible health insurance plan. Most likely you already know that if you have one offered to you. The maxes are up on the screen, the 3550 or 7100. If the money's used for medical expenses at any point in your life, it comes out tax-free, which free and tax are a great combination of words. The other side that a lot of people don't recognize is that if used in retirement, if used after age 65, they're taxed on the way out the same way that your distributions from a 401k would be. So they're taxed at the federal and state level. So if you look at your normal paycheck, there's kind of 4 layers of payroll taxes. You have your state tax, your federal tax, your Social Security tax, and Medicare. From a 401k standpoint, you get to avoid paying state and federal tax on the way in, but you still have to pay Social Security and Medicare tax. You don't get to avoid those FICA taxes, which is a really important distinction. The combination of the two is about 7.5% right now. And then also recognizing, looking again at the 401k, when you take the money out, you then pay at your state and federal level, right? So you avoid it on the way in. When taken out, you pay on the back end. If you look at the HSA, you get to avoid paying state, federal, Social Security, and Medicare tax on the way in. You get to avoid all 4 of them, which is awesome. Then if you take it out for medical expenses, you've avoided those taxes completely, right? You never pay a penny of tax on those dollars. But if instead you say, okay, I'm using this as a vehicle to supplement my retirement accounts, you only pay the state and federal tax after age 65. So that's a pretty big difference, right? That means even if you're using it to replace your savings that you're doing in your 401k, you've avoided Social Security and Medicare tax. That's big. That's a free, close to 7.5%. Why not take advantage of it? So I'll step down from my soapbox. I see we're at 12:45. If you can tell, I'm really passionate about this stuff. I can talk for a full hour on it. So if you do have questions, definitely happy to take them. Before that, I'd like to finish with thank you. Thank you for your time this afternoon. Thank you for the business and trust that you place with us at Sage Rutty. We certainly don't take that lightly. As a reminder, we're here as a resource, so please don't hesitate to reach out. Right now, I see that some questions are popping in, so that's fantastic. Happy to address those. If you are more comfortable just in a one-on-one, or you want to get detailed in your situation, reach out. We're available for Zoom, available for email or phone conversations. We're hoping in the near future we'll receive some guidelines from management on when we can start having people in office and when I'm allowed back on the road. But reach out, take advantage of it. If you came in off the street without the 401k relationship, the going rate is $300 an hour. If you come in and you say, I'm an employee of one of the 401k plans that works with Sage Rutty, the going rate is free. So hard to beat free. Take advantage of it because it's a pretty nice benefit. So I'm happy to start taking some questions. So let's see what's been rolling in here. The first question here is an HSA taxed after age 65, even if used for medical purposes? It is not. Anytime in your life, if you use your HSA for a qualified medical expense, it is tax-free. Completely tax-free. It's exclusively if you took it out just for income after age 65. At that point, it has income tax. So what most people say is, when I retire, I'm probably still going to have plenty of medical bills, arguably more and more important than during my working life. Why not let that keep growing and compounding? What I should have mentioned earlier is a reminder that you can be investing your HSA dollars. So you can be utilizing an investment feature. I know within my HSA, the custodian requires that the first 2,000 stays in the cash/savings account. Everything above that can be invested for the long term. So I know the estimates in today's dollars is for a retired couple, you're going to spend about $250,000 on medical expenses. To me, letting everything grow tax-free for medical expenses in retirement is a no-brainer. Thank you for the question, John. The second question is, I may have missed it, is there a cap for your HSA? Yes, as you should know, because there's so much great tax benefit to it, the IRS they're not dummies. They recognize the tax benefit. So they set the cap pretty low. So the cap is here as we work backwards. The cap is for an individual, you can be saving $3,550, and for a family plan, you can be saving $7,100. There are some interesting situations. If you are trying to max out and you have an adult child on your plan, so if you have, I know when I graduated college, I still stayed on my mom's medical plan because she's a nurse and it was fantastic, but I was still filling out my own tax return. There's some cool planning techniques that are way more detailed than the context here. But if you're in that situation and you have the family plan available, reach out to me. There's a really, really cool tax advantage available. All right. Excellent questions. I really appreciate it, guys. Again, if you have any questions after this, I'll go back to the last page here. Please don't hesitate to reach out. Always happy to help. Always happy to assist in any way I can. If I don't know the answer, certainly we partner with enough different professionals to get you the right answer. What I've had a lot of people taking me up on is, here's my target date fund, or here's my balanced portfolio that I had just selected when I signed up for the plan. Can you tell me if it's the right stuff, or can you mirror me into something better? What is it? What should I be doing? Always happy to do that. Really easy, and it's probably something everyone should be doing at least every couple years. All right. The next question that came in is also a very good one and the topic for our next TeleK. So I'm glad that you brought this up. The question was, when does it make sense to invest in a Roth fund versus a 401k? So while we have a number of different people that are set up into a number of different employers' plans right now, I'll have to talk a little bit in general. But for many people, you have the option to do Roth dollars in your existing 401k account. So many 401k plans have a pre-tax channel or a Roth channel, and they're still within your 401k umbrella. When choosing between the two, if you say, okay, should I be putting all my money towards Roth or all my money towards pre-tax? It's much a matter of where you think that your tax rate is going to be when you're ready to spend the money. So there's kind of two situations where I'd really strongly recommend, or three situations I really strongly recommend a Roth. The first is if you're young and starting your career and going to make a lot more money over your lifetime, save in Roth. Save everything you can into Roth because you're probably in the lowest tax bracket you'll ever experience. The second situation is if you're in a year where your income has dropped. So if you got furloughed or your spouse got laid off or for some reason that there was a cut in total income in your household in this year, switch over to doing Roth, right? Whenever your income drops, your tax rate lowers. So if your tax rate's lowered this year, do them towards a Roth, pay the low tax now, and avoid higher tax later. The third situation, which is a little bit of speculation, is if you think that the government's going to raise taxes in the future. So I might be a little cynical in thinking this, but I'm a believer that tax rates will probably be higher than they are today in the future. Historically speaking, we're in one of the lowest tax environments from a personal tax return standpoint in history. Since the government created the income tax, we're really low compared to it. The current bill actually is set to expire in 2025, which would see a spike in taxes across the board. In almost every person's individual tax return, your taxes will go up. So to me, between now and 2025, it's probably a good time to be saving into a Roth account. If you are going to be, having the same income today and in retirement, save in the Roth now because your tax bracket's likely lower. So really great question. You can check with me and I'm happy to answer if your individual plan offers a Roth option in the 401k. If you want to know a lot more details on it, reach out, or next in 2 weeks from now is TeleK. That's the main topic, is Roth versus pre-tax. And then if you want to talk through your tax return and whether Roth makes sense, definitely reach out. Happy to do so. If you can tell, I am a tax nerd, so this stuff gets me excited. I'm happy to work through it. Thank you for the question. Okay. Well, I appreciate that so many people hung on through the question section. I know that your time is valuable. Again, thank you for your time. Thank you for your business. Thank you for your trust. And thank you to all of our essential workers out there that have kept us safe. Thank you, everyone.